Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again. It's about it's Friday. Let's get right down to our Torah lesson. This week's portion is very, very powerful. Parashat Vayigash is one of my favorite portions of the Torah. It's so full of suspense, like we're waiting for the meeting of Joseph and his brothers, for Joseph to reveal himself. And here, finally, that's exactly what happens. Yosef reveals himself. We see the feeling of brothers reuniting after so many years of separation, of not knowing what's going on, the doubt, is Yosef alive? Isn't he alive? The meeting of Jacob and of course in Joseph. This is very powerful, tremendous teaching of love, this week's portion. Very powerful. But I want to focus on this area today, but to begin with trying to analyze a verse in the Torah here, which is, again, and raises a question. And from here we'll take it from here and try to get involved in this whole concept of what I spoke about, of brotherly love, of reuniting, understanding a little bit about this area. Anyway, what does it say in the Torah? It says, we look in 45, this week's portion, chapter 45, it says, Vayipol al tzavarei Binyamin vayev. Achi vayev. So what happens? Joseph falls on Benjamin's neck and cries. And then it says, Ubinyamin bachal tzavarav, and Benjamin cries on Joseph's neck. What is this crying on the neck? What is it all about? And right away, Rashi brings down the Midrash. Very simple. I'll explain what this crying is all about. Joseph is crying because of the destruction of the two temples that are going to be built in the portion of Benjamin, which is, again, we know the tribe of Benjamin reached part of Jerusalem. And Benjamin is crying over Yosef, of Joseph, because we know what's going to happen in the portion of Joseph, the temple. The temporary temple called the Mishkan in Shiloh is built in the portion of Joseph, of Ephraim. And that's going to be destroyed, and that's why Benjamin is crying. So a very interesting question over here is, wow, is this what the Midrash has to teach us over here? My goodness. 22 years the brothers have not seen one another. And they're crying over the temples that weren't even built yet, they're going to be destroyed in the future. I mean, come on, let's get down to earth over here. Talking about two brothers that haven't seen each other in ages. Benjamin had no idea he was alive. The brothers of the same mother. And they're so happy to reunite. The crying is because of their happiness. They're so happy and they're full of rejoice. So what do our rabbis want to teach us with this Midrash over here? Talking about the temples that weren't even built yet, they're going to be destroyed. Give me a break. But of course we know that our rabbis have tremendous insight. And everything they say, it's worth its weight in gold. We have to understand what they're trying to say. We can't just, God forbid, take a midrash lightly. We must understand what they're trying to say. So we will get back to this question in a moment. But I love asking questions first. That's the Jewish way. Ask a lot of questions and then get to the answers. The next question I want to ask, which I saw by one of my special rabbis, Rav Chaim Drukman Shlita, he wrote a beautiful essay on this week's portion. And he asked a question which stands out, and I've asked this question for many, many years to myself. We know the rabbis teach us that when Jacob meets Joseph, what happens? Here's something very interesting. Even more mind-boggling than the first question. What happens? It says Joseph is crying on the neck of Jacob. But it doesn't say that Jacob doesn't even cry. It doesn't say he's crying at all. A father, give me a break over here. 22 years, a papa doesn't see his son. And he's not going to cry after 22 years? Why is only Joseph crying for? And if you look even deeper, the rabbis make it even harder. What do they teach us? They teach us that Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, was saying the Kriyat Shema. He was saying Shema. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And because he was saying the Shema, you're not allowed to talk, you're not allowed to interrupt. And therefore he couldn't cry, he couldn't react to his son jumping on his neck. So what is the question we have to ask ourselves? He knew that he was going to meet his son now. He was told, came to get him, he was going to meet his son. He had to right now say Shema. I couldn't say it beforehand. What is going on over here? How do we answer these questions? Very, very important questions. But they're both related, and now we're going to try to somehow connect and relate to the questions. So first of all, there are two answers that Rav Drucken brings down. One, in the name of the Maharal Miprag, we spoke about him many times over. One of the great rabbis of the 16th century. I think I mentioned him last week, as a matter of fact. We're talking about dreams. And the Maharal Prague says something very, 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 very beautiful. This is brought down by the Maharam. One of the great Hasidic masters bring it down as well, this explanation. And the Maharal explains that this love, that Yaakov was this excitement and love and power of be reuniting with his son Yosef. What do you want to do right away? The easiest thing to do is just to immediately hug his son, kiss him, and just act like a human being, a regular human being, and just let the emotions take over. But what do you want to do, Yaakov? He wanted to take this love that he has for his son, so much love, a father for a child, for his son. But he wanted to take all this love and show his love for God. And therefore, right away when he did the mitzvah of Shema, when he met his son, he wanted to prepare that moment to unite with Hashem first, before he unites with his son. And he said, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. God is one, to show all this love. He's going to focus on Hashem first, to show, to learn, to use this to rise spiritually. Of course he loves his son. Of course he's crying, his heart was full of things, but he held himself back to fulfill the commandment. What commandment? Of showing the love to Hashem. At this moment, just a thought came to my mind. It says, and we read about in the last portions that came up, Vayitapek Yosef. Yosef held himself back. With what? Twice it mentions. Number one, we know when Yosef did not want to reveal himself to the brothers, he sort of held himself back in the beginning, but not revealing himself to the brothers, right? What does that mean? Yosef himself was holding back. Because again, sometimes when you hold something back, you are trying to focus and rectify. What does this holding back come from? It comes from rectifying something within. A person has a lot of energy he wants to give out. But it comes to first think. I must hold, I must not reveal myself yet. There's a reason behind it. He has saying as far as holding back now before, he lets emotions take over. We have to sometimes think and focus. It's interesting, it's connected. But anyway, let's quickly get back to what we were saying. So we see here that the father, Yaakov Avinu, wanted to use that amazing power of love, and he focused it towards his son Yosef Atzadik. Focus towards God, and then he will focus the same love towards his son Yosef Atzadik. Getting back to the first question I asked about how were they crying over the temple. I mean, come on, they're so happy to see each other. That was a natural. And of course, the answer is both are right. Of course, they were crying over seeing one another. But a rabbi saw something very, very deep over there. They saw a reflection to the temple, to the temples that were going to be destroyed in Benjamin and Joseph, and Joseph's portion in Shiloh. And why? And the answer is, we know that the whole center around, the entire center around brotherly love and uniting creates and builds our redemption. It builds our land. It builds spiritual worlds. When we ourselves are one and united, then we will reach the final goal of our people, to be a light to the nations, to reach our fullest greatness in the land, of being able to really show the light of Israel and Torah to the world. And that's where the temples will stand again. Our final temple will never be destroyed. And that is exactly why they cried, because both of them were now all this brotherly love, and they know this is the rectification of destruction. They saw that it wasn't rectified yet. They saw later on how the temples will be destroyed, and then the brother love again will be, this unity will take place, and it's all connected to that meeting of happiness we see. How amazing. I came across, nothing's by chance, but I was just looking through some books. I was doing a search for this crying over Benjamin and Joseph, and I came across a book that was printed in 1960 by a rabbi I never really heard of, and came across a page of the book, absolutely amazing. And he says something so beautiful. He says, he asks another question. He says, why wasn't each one of the brothers crying over their own personal destruction, right? Because if the rabbi is teaching us that the temples are going to be destroyed, and that's what they were crying about, well, Benjamin had 2 temples destroyed in his portion, and Joseph had the Shiloh destruction. So they should have each cried over their own personal destruction. Why did they cry over? This one cried over his destruction, he cried over his destruction. He said something so beautiful. And he says that this is what life is all about. And if a person is only worried about his own personal destruction, his own personal pain, then he missed the boat. And the most important thing is to be able to reach out to your brother and see what's hurting him, and see what his destruction is and what his problems are, and try to rectify his. And that will bring and unite and bring down the brotherly love. Amazing and beautiful thing he said, but it's so powerful and it's so true. And that's what the Torah wants to teach us. Why is it mentioning this whole thing? It wants to teach us again how important it is for us to look over our shoulders, turn our necks, and see the pain of others, and not always worried about our own personal self. It should be the opposite. We should be looking around to see where the other person needs you, and that will rectify, and that will bring about the final building of our third temple, God willing, speedily in our days. Shabbat Shalom. Was great to be back with you all. Let us take these lessons to our heart and apply them. It's so important of brotherly love. Shabbat Shalom. Bisorot tovot, yeshot v'nechamot.